first thing we're going to talk about today is exercise selections. You've got individual biomechanics for a client, you've got obviously the goals as well. And then you've got things like client access and what we call like the stimulus fatigue ratio. And all these things start to run through a decision-making process in our minds on like, what's the best movement for a client? For example, it's like, if someone wants to be strong in a particular exercise, like a squat or a bench, we need to make sure they squat and bench, and they probably do that with a barbell. So that's how we start to choose exercises to make them specific. We've talked about specificity so much, and I think that it's a really integral lens to look through when we're selecting exercises. If we talk about something like individual biomechanics, it's like how you squat to how I squat, or how I squat to how Ben squats is totally different. So if I'm squatting for quad development, it's like I need to squat in a specific way. I need to put myself in a specific position. But if someone's a powerlifter and they're squatting, it's like they have a criteria that they need to meet to squat. So both of those are going to look really different. Like that's why in some instances, even in powerlifting itself, it's like we've got high bar squatting and then we've got low bar squatting. It's like we can favor a position, like, maybe it's with that person stronger in that position, or maybe the distance isn't as fast, so they don't have to work as much, or something along those lines. So again, we've got to get really specific within how we do an exercise, and that can be based off the leverages or based off the goal of the movement itself. So the next thing to talk about is the demands that a movement can place someone under in terms of stress and fatigue. So we call it the stimulus fatigue ratio. What it essentially is like movements can be more stimulating and less fatiguing, and then you can have other movements that are highly stimulating as well, but highly fatiguing too. So a really good example of this could be, a barbell deadlift, conventional style. It's a really stimulating exercise. It's like, stimulates a large degree of muscle mass. There's so many muscles involved in doing that exercise, but the trade-off is that, it's really stressful on your joints. It's a really complicated exercise as well. So perception of effort is really high, and obviously we need a little bit of time to recover, a little bit more time, because we've got this joint and connective tissue that's being stressed out as well. So we've got to take that into consideration when we're selecting exercises, because although these things are highly stimulating, it's like we need to make sure we're getting the ratio right within the program. Because we don't want to have a program that's just got all these barbell movements and all these highly stimulating exercises, but they're really, really stressful and fatiguing at the same time. It's like we either need to bring the volume down of work that we do and bring the frequency down that we expose that athlete to those movements, or we can think about putting in other exercises that are less fatiguing. Everything's going to be fatiguing to a degree, but just less, but more stimulating. So it could be, that's where we lean on machines and cables and dumbbells in certain positions and stuff. And we can really start to formulate a program to, get the most out of that client, obviously make it specific to their goals, but, make sure that they can recover from those movements. And then the last one that people don't really talk about when it comes to exercise selection is just client access. Clients that are going to have access to like the best gyms available. They're going to have all of the machines, all the cables. And then you've got clients that are going to be like, I'm in a gym with, a squat rack and a bench and dumbbells up to 30 kilos. So we have to make those programs work for that client. And this is where we have then start to get a little bit more innovative with the programming. And obviously when we are in limited circumstances, the variety drops. So we're starting to pick these focal movements and kind of work around that. But if you don't have access to a hack squat, you're not going to go and put that in your program. So we do really need to kind of center the movements around what that person realistically can do. One of the last considerations to talk about is exercise order. So how we actually sequentially select these movements can be based off a couple of different things. So there's no set way to do this, but we've got to look at it through the lens of like what's best for the client, what's best for the goal, what are we really trying to achieve out of this workout and out of the workout plan. Typically, we would want to start the workout in a lot of cases with the most complex focal point movement of the workout. So something that's like highly fatiguing, but highly stimulating as well. Maybe your squat, maybe your bench, maybe some, body weighted pull-ups, or it's going to take a lot of concentration. We want to be as low fatigued as possible to make sure that we can complete that task, because it is quite complicated. Now, we don't always need to work that way, where we like pick the most complicated exercise and kind of, scale the workout down in terms of complexity. In some instances, we need to look at, okay, well, what's the focal point of this workout or this program? And that could be working on specific body parts. from a physique development perspective. It could be working on the skill of an exercise for a client who's maybe failing in a squat or failing in a bench or something like that. So you might put their accessory movement first or their skill-based movement first so they can just get really good at that movement in a low fatigue state like we talked about before. When it comes to physique development, same thing. It's like if you want bigger arms, if you want bigger calves, it's like put those movements at the start of the session. It's like fatigue is at its all-time low, concentration and performance is going to be at its all-time high. And it's like, just think about the attitude that people take to muscle groups that they don't really like. It's like, one, they probably don't like doing them already. And then it's like, do it at the end of the workout when they're already fatigued. It's like, we know that we don't perform as well as the workout goes on. So we really need to start to be selective. And I guess that's where we can start to think about, okay, well, if this person has like more dominant muscle groups or something like that, it's like put them at the end of the workout because they're going to perform those already. So when it comes to exercise selection, it's like, it's not just a bunch of random things put together. It's like, we need to think about the goal of that person, the intention of the workout, and kind of scale those exercises accordingly. To wrap everything up that we're talking about in terms of programming elements, we need to talk about tempo. So tempo is about like the cadence of the rep. So people traditionally talk about tempo in like 3 phases. It's kind of newer now to talk about it in terms of 4 phases. So it's like the eccentric lowering portion of the movement, that static lengthened position is another phase. Then we've got like the concentric phase, which is the shortening of the movement. And then we've got this static concentric phase as well. So we can manipulate the cadence of the rep. Some people think it's to improve like time under tension and improve hypertrophic adaptations and stuff. When we look at research, it's like, it's a little bit premature, but still, when we look at like fundamentals and exercise physiology, it's like, as long as we adhere to rep and reserve and take those progressive elements to training, from a hypertrophy perspective, it's probably not that important. But what's really important about tempo and what it can give somebody is control. That whole move slow, learn fast, it's like you can start to really centralize the work where it needs to go, and you can start to gain more proprioception because you're more aware of your body and space when you can actually pay attention. So moving slow is a really, really advantageous thing to do. If you've got someone new to squatting, you've got someone who's maybe like, you need to stress a certain portion of the lift out. So like a bench press, like maybe just off the chest. So it's like we can actually alter the tempo, create a little pause at that static eccentric position, drive up, we can utilize these things to stress out different portions of the lift as well. It's a great tool as long as we understand that from a physique perspective, there's still advantages to going with dynamic reps along with tempo reps. We have the ability to use it as a tool. If we talk about all the elements of the program that we've talked about over the last 3 videos, it's like they're the things that people want to talk about, or they're the things that people want to have in their program, and they're the things that like people should know about. So when they look at their program, they can understand it's like, okay, so this is what it's for, this is what my goal is, this is made for me, and it's got these exercises that I have access to and these rep ranges, and I understand I need to rest for this long. And you'll gain such a greater appreciation for a good program when you know these things. And that's why we've talked about all of this stuff today, so people get a better idea of what to look for.